What's up everybody, Matt here, and today I'll be reviewing Superior Iron Man issue 1. So let's get into it. So first off, if you're not familiar with this and you're just picking it up, I'll just do a little bit of recap of what's been going on. So if in Axis, in the Avengers and X-Men big event that's happening at the moment, they've just defeated the Red Skull, and defeating him caused this big psychic fallout type thing to happen, and it changed the personalities of heroes and villains. I think Deadpool became sane, Carnage became kind of like a hero, he's starting to do a bit of hero work, and one of the big ones that got changed was Tony Stark. And the way it changed him was he went back to his, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, womanizer, alcoholic ways. And the story set is about him inventing an app that is pretty much Extremis 3.0, I think they call it, and it makes you the best version of yourself. Like, as Pepper puts it in the comic, it turns you into a supermodel, and he's testing it out in San Francisco. He's moved up there and he's given everyone in the city it, except not everyone in the city can access it, and the people that can't access it have become this subclass to this new first class that's there, and they're getting beaten up and everything. So that's how Daredevil becomes involved. He comes and he sort of protects some of these people that are getting beaten up by these people who are using the Extremis app, and that's how he gets involved. So I think he's probably going to be like trying to track down what Tony's doing, and it gets even more sinister when Tony invents this new suit of Iron Man armor that's actually derived from a symbiote. He built it off the building blocks of a symbiote, or so he says. So it's technically a symbiote. And he also places a paywall on this Extremis app, so now people have to pay, I think it's $100 a day to access this app. Tony Stark has initially put a paywall on his Extremis mobile app, and people obviously can't afford this because it's an outrageous amount of money. And they're resorting to, robbing people, beating up people for money, stuff like that. And it's up to Daredevil to sort of stop these people from doing that. And he takes it upon himself to confront Tony about this. And Tony, of course, being this whole, smug, self-centered asshole that he is now, he doesn't take kindly to being told what to do. So him and Daredevil, get into a little bit of a fight, and Daredevil ends up capturing Tony, but it's all part of like this grand scheme Tony has at giving Matt Murdock his sight back, which he ends up doing at the end of this comic. And I thought that was a really cool, turn of events. I swear I did not see that coming, and that's not a pun. It was so cool. But this issue was so amazing. It was even better than the first one. I'm really loving the whole smug, self-centered, rich boy, back before he became Iron Man, Tony Stark. Tom Taylor writes him really well, and I actually spoke to Tom Taylor this past weekend, and he said there's some really big stuff happening in the next couple of issues. So Tony, being the full of himself asshole he is, gives Matt Murdock his sight back, but of course it requires constant Extremis injections. Something Tony knows and something Matt knows. So Tony's kind of got him around his finger, he said, if you want to keep your sight, you'll have to, be friends with me, basically. We also see more of this other Iron Man that was teased in the first issue, and I think, I'm probably wrong though, but I think mainly because of what the dialogue was like between him and Pepper, it might be the Iron Man from the alternate Earth that came over in a earlier arc in Avengers. And I mainly think that because costume sort of matches up with that one, because that Earth was a little more, Golden Age, all their uniforms look like the Golden Age, the first appearance of Iron Man and that sort of stuff. And, it's referenced in the dialogue that, like, his tech on his world isn't as advanced as the 616 universe, so it's quite possibly it could be him. I'm 90% sure it is. We don't know yet. Teen Abomination also comes after Tony, destroying his house and, trying to kill a bunch of people, and it's good that even though he's a smug prick, Tony still saves people, and even though he's like saves them and then just dumps them in the water, he's still saving people, which is good. We also find out that Team Abomination only wants Tony's help, and Tony of course takes advantage of this and sort of makes him like, I guess, like a servant from now on, because he's telling him to like clean up. So Tony announces a new security system for San Francisco called Iron Sight. This is a fleet of drones that will monitor the whole city, invading everyone's privacy, and it's essentially there to protect the people who have extremists against the people who don't, because there was that whole sort of class war that happened a couple of issues ago where people without extremists were attacking people with extremists to try and get extremists. Team Abomination is still living at Stark Island, and he's there because Tony's gonna study him, and he says he's gonna like try and reverse the effects of the whole Abomination gamma radiation thing, but obviously there's some nefarious purposes, you know, he'll probably repurpose it for something. Daredevil turns up, and he's not too happy about the whole Iron Sight thing, you know, it's kind of invasion of privacy and everything. And Daredevil learns that Extremis is a virus that Tony put in the water supply of San Francisco. It's a hidden virus in Extremis that was there before he actually brought up Extremis. And he was able to get it like in everyone because San Francisco has a ban on bottled water, so people will be drinking, you know, water from the dam and like town water and stuff, so you could easily distribute it throughout the city, which is actually a really smart plan. Team Abomination attacks Daredevil, and Tony ends up trapping Matt in a Iron Man armor and ends up taking him to like this lab, secret lab, and wiping his memory, which I thought was pretty cool. So yeah, Tony keeps becoming more and more of a douche, you know, he's wipes Daredevil's memory and is sort of rubbing it in his face a little bit by like paying for all his hospital costs and everything, and like seeing him in hospital and being like all friendly and everything. He's being a real douche.
He continues his tests on Teen Abomination, with Tony having to actually use the thruster in his gauntlet to push a needle into the monster's arm. Tony sits down with Teen Abomination to listen to his story and know his origin. Teen's mother worked for Stark Industries and ended up bringing him to work one day when he was sick. She was testing gamma radiation when there was an explosion, and she were exposed to some gamma radiation before Happy Hogan actually managed to turn off the machine. Teen's mother blames Tony for the accident, since, you know, this was the time where Tony was still leading a double life, you know, the secret identity, and, you know, he was drinking and everything. He was busy, he was meant to be there, and he was busy off fighting Whiplash and the villain, the Black Llama. The fight almost killed Tony, and he manages to get back to Stark Industries after the explosion, but he passes out. Teen's powers, however, don't kick in straight away. They actually stay dormant for about 8 years, and they only start coming up when he gets really, really angry at his mother, and he actually ends up destroying the building they're in and killing her. And that's how he's not been able to change back, because he's still sort of mad at himself for killing his mother. So that's why he hasn't been able to change back to a normal human. Tony's computer finishes dividing Teen's DNA up to sort of discover who he is and what he is, and they find out that Happy was actually his father. Unfortunately, Happy is dead. Later, after remembering his fight with Black Llama and how he couldn't remember what happened after that, Tony accesses his armor's footage, but the data is missing, and he's kind of not happy about that because he thinks someone has taken time. So Stark meets with General Daly to offer him a type of weapon, I believe, like a super weapon, since his people sort of look over these files and say that there's something that's pretty devastating and immoral about this weapon or device that Stark is trying to sell the US military, and he's asking for $200 billion for this weapon, so it's something pretty big. And also, you know, in classic, you know, Tony Stark, you know, dick move, he's also prepared the same weapon offer for both the Russians and the Chinese, so he's sort of betting them against, you know, the United States, and, you know, trying to get the United States' money. At Resilient HQ, the mysterious Iron Man and Pepper trace a payment of $200 billion made to Stark by someone who they assume has to be a government mainly because of the size of the money. So Stark, using the money, he goes and proceeds to buy a massive media company, or at least he tries to buy them out, and a hostile takeover of sorts. And of course the board members aren't too happy, and this leads to them getting into kind of a fight with Tony and his new security guard, Teen Abomination. This leads to Tony calling in the suit and sort of threatening them, violently, really. Pepper Potts arrives, revealing that she has actually bought the company already before Tony decided to even think about buying the company. Pepper takes Tony away to talk in private, getting him to remove his armor before stepping into an elevator, which he then escapes by using some type of hover jetpack type shoes, similar to like the Iron Man and repulsors. The elevator then opens, revealing the mysterious Iron Man, whom then attacks Teen Abomination and Tony. After quickly dealing with Abomination, he turns his sights on Tony, and it is revealed that the mysterious Iron Man is actually a sentient armor. Actually has no one in it.
Confronting the Iron Man armor, Tony realizes that it's him in the armor, and we find out that before he lost his mind fighting Black Llama, he developed a backup system where he backed up his whole mind, and if something was to happen to him, he'd be able to sort of re-upload this and sort of be back where he started from. And he gave it to Pepper and Happy before having his memory wiped of it. The armor states that it wants to go into Tony's head and figure out what happened to him, and see if they can find out what's wrong with him and everything. And if he can't find out what's wrong with him, he will replace Tony. Tony's new armor tries to stop the old armor from doing this by getting into the lab, sort of beating down a door, but it can't, and the old armor separates and sort of surrounds Tony and encases him in itself and takes him up into the atmosphere. Tony's new armor follows and begins to fight the old armor, but the old armor destroys the new armor, since the new armor can't operate in space. Apparently it's not meant to go there, apparently. Back on Earth, Pepper traps Teen Abomination and tries to calm him down. Pepper wants to know what happened to Tony, and Teen Abomination sort of agrees to sort of talk about what's happening and everything. The old armor takes Tony to the International Space Station, where it links up Tony to a bunch of computers and is planning to sort of jack into his mind, sort of like the Matrix. Pepper contacts them, and before they start, they need to find out some certain things that might not be accessible after the fact that they've been into his head. And one of them is like, what weapon did he sell for trillions of dollars to the US Army? Where did that go? What happened to it and everything? And the armor jacks into Tony's mind, and Tony tells them that there is something big coming, obviously referring to the incursions, and he's going to give the people a way to sort of save themselves, but it won't save all of them. It will save most of them, but not all of them. Tony seems kind of happy with that, which is kind of shocking. He's willing to let millions die. And part of this is to, let the whole world's media... He needs to buy, like, the world's media up so they can believe in the cause, so he can, like, put out a message, like, a tailored message, so they'll believe it and everything. He needs to control everything, basically. While they've been talking in Tony's head, Tony's new armor made its way onto the space station and infiltrated the old armor, sort of overpowering and sort of burning it out. So yeah, I guess the Iron Man armor is after losing connection with Tony up on the International Space Station. Pepper gets to work trying to get the connection back, and it works, and Tony responds, saying that it's over and he is back to his old normal self. Only it is the superior Tony trying to trick her. AI Tony arrives in a Silver Centurion armor, telling Pepper that it's a trick, saying that the liquid armor got into the Mark II and compromised it. Tony then reveals that the AI Tony's real plan to Pepper, which is to wipe his mind and replace the real Tony. Pepper is pretty angry since this wasn't the initial plan. The AI says that they have no chance of saving the real Tony, and that he's too far gone into this weird, dickish demeanor that he's got now. Tony leaves the ISS and heads back to Earth and invites the whole of San Francisco to a party on Stark Island. but he only did so to surround himself with innocent human shields, so Pepper and AI Tony cannot attack him. On Stark Island, Tony welcomes the partygoers with a pool full of champagne. Later on, after some intense partying, Tony goes to his lab and activates a program. Back at Reliant HQ, Pepper and Jamie share a moment, and Jamie awakes to some nightmares, but doesn't think they are as bad as waking up as himself as a monster. There is a nice moment where Pepper and the AI Tony tell them that he isn't a monster and that they promise to fix him once all this is over. Tony calls Pepper, telling him one thing called Biomark 1, which has been activated, which is this new way to apparently control people that Tony has invented. AI Tony arrives at Stark Tower, and Tony has turned on all the partygoers into human shields with this Biomark 1. AI Tony didn't come alone though, and we find out that he has actually activated all of Tony's old armors to help him against the real Tony. The armors all rescue people and take them away safely, and securing them away from the real Tony. Both Tonys end up fighting, with the real Tony actually gaining the upper hand and dragging the AI Tony into the lab, where it is revealed that he has made a massive new Ironmonger style armor. So yeah, pretty cool issue. I really liked in this issue the stuff with Jamie. I'm glad we're getting a little bit more character development with him, and he's come quite a long way from, you see him in like the first couple of issues, he's kind of like this rampaging monster, and now he's sort of like calmed down, and he's... AI Tony and real Tony continue their fight above Stark Island, with Tony Stark showing off his massive new symbiote armor. Tony destroys a bunch of his old armors, since AI Tony is now controlling them and trying to take down this new symbiote armor. The fight heads over into the Golden Gate Bridge, where AI Tony mentions collateral damage, and if they head into the city, more will follow. Tony, of course, being the asshole that he is, heads into the city, but is stopped by Pepper in an upgraded rescue armor. Tony is furious that the AI Tony built her a suit and proceeds to say that he is the only one who is allowed to build these suits. He then proceeds to destroy the Hulkbuster armor that the AI Tony is using to combat the symbiote armor. Thanks to her new armor, Pepper uses a sonic weapon against Tony's symbiote armor, since symbiotes are susceptible to sonic weapons. This liquefies the armor and knocks out Tony. She is able to take him back to Resilient HQ. Once there, they talk about reverting Tony back to his old self. As they talk, Tony pulls a small device and puts it into a computer. The device starts destroying the AI Tony's armor and wiping him out of the armors and the computers. Tony reveals that getting captured was all part of his plan, so that he could upload the virus directly into the Resilient HQ computers. AI Tony tries to kill Tony, saying that if this is what they become, then maybe the world doesn't need Tony Stark. Pepper attacks the AI, saying that she won't let that happen. Tony reveals that there's an antidote for the virus in the computers and plugs it in. The device captures the AI Tony, leaving him on the USB stick and deleting him from the rest of the armors. Jamie appears and attacks Tony, but is blasted back by the arrival of Tony's symbiote armor. Tony reveals that Jamie's mother didn't die when he first transformed into this abomination creature, and that she is in a New York hospital. Thanks to Tony telling him this, the boy reverts back to his human form. As Tony leaves, Pepper tries to use the sonic weapons against him, but they don't work this time because Tony apparently had the symbiote shielded and only brought the shields down so he could get captured. Pepper says that they have failed Tony and failed to stop all his worst fears coming true. So now that she can't save Tony, she will save the world from him. She will use the power and wealth that she has accumulated to stop Tony's extremist drug and him. So that's it for Superior Iron Man. Superior Iron Man is now done, leading into Secret Wars. I very much like this series, mainly because Tom Taylor was writing it, but also because I like that we got dirtbag Tony Stark back, and he was written really well. He was a real dirtbag, and this issue really hammered that home. Like, he's gone, like, he's so far gone they can't fix him anymore, which, you know, Pepper like at the end says, like, she's failed Tony, she's, you know, brought his worst fears out. Now she's gonna, I guess, go against him and stop him from doing what he wants to do, you know, with this extremist stuff and changing people and everything, which was really cool. It was also kind of anticlimactic for Jamie's role in this. You know, he just sort of reverted back to, you know, a kid once he learned his mother was, you know, alive. It was kind of anticlimactic, you know. There's a line that's like, why didn't Tony tell him earlier? And Tony was, of course he's not going to tell him, because then the kid would revert back. You know, while he was the teen abomination, he was basically basically Tony's bodyguard, and that's another thing, that's dickbag Tony Stark, but I didn't like how it's kind of anticlimactic, like, oh, she's just in a hospital, she's fine, you know. But yeah, really cool, and killed off the AI Tony Stark, so now he's, you know, gone. He's stuck on like a USB stick and never coming back probably. So dickbag Tony Stark is staying around, but really amazing send-off issue. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.
Hey guys, Joel here reminding you that this video was made possible thanks to our many great patrons. If you want to become a patron and get exclusive comic book cast content, then click the Patreon link below and see how you can help us bring you the content you've come to love. Every little bit helps, and thanks for listening.